Hello, writers. Have you ever bought a writing craft book someone says you just have to read?
Is it still sitting on your shelf? Have you even cracked the spine?
That's totally me.
Don't ask Renee how many craft books she owns.
Why do we keep buying these books we never read?
We all want to improve as writers, but that's hard to do alone.
That's why we started the Words to Write By podcast, to tackle these books together, chapter by chapter, and learn from their advice.
Or not. Sometimes they're wrong.
Hi, I'm Renee Nelson, former college writing instructor turned full-time writer and podcaster. After many years, I finally have a complete draft of my memoir.
And I'm Kim Smugato, author of the humorous fantasy novel Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, which is the first book in the Boy Bands and Dragons series, released by Riverfolk Publishing.
And now, on with the podcast. Hey, everybody.
Hello and welcome to Words to Write By.
I hope you're all as excited as we are.
Because we are not talking about the artist way. Although we are talking a little bit about the artist way.
We are saying goodbye to the artist way. Woohoo!
We always try to give the books a proper send-off, a kind of a summary. So basically, if somebody else doesn't want to listen to any of the other podcasts, but they still want to see our opinion on what the book was about, we give them at the very end. And then we also introduce the new book.
Yes, it is the segue episode.
Before we get started, though, let's talk about our process group.
Ooh, we're starting out with the process group. That's fun.
I think we get so involved with what we're doing that we might forget about it. Because it's
true.
Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Zoom, on Meetup, and you can get to it from our website.
You can get to it on our website. There's a banner. It'll take you right to Meetup, or you could just go to Meetup and go to Words to Write By process group, and it'll take you right there. Writers show up and they talk about their issues. They ask for some problem solving stuff or some resources. Sometimes they show up to share those resources. Everyone from journalists to fantasy writers, to science fiction writers, to literary fiction, memoirs, screenplays, poetry, you name it.
We're there.
We're there. So we hope to see you there.
And now, on to the book.
In our goodbye to the artist's way, we're going to talk about things that we didn't like, which was quite a bit, but also things we did like and whether or not this book was worth it after all.
Right. Well, it also depends on where you buy it, because since this has been around for 30 years and so many people have used it, very easy to find in used bookstores for cheap, right?
Right. So is it worth the price of a used book?
It depends on how much wall space you have.
True. So if you have not been following along and listening to our analysis of The Artist's Way, what is your general impression, Kim?
Well, I was writing down things that I got out of it, and I'll say that now I know what morning pages are.
Yeah, we know what morning pages are. We have a whole podcast on that one. We know what artist states are.
And I know that they really don't work for me, either of them.
I like the artist states, but I don't think of them as artist states. It's just stuff I already did.
Right. One thing I keep coming to with this book is that for people that are genuinely blocked, people that want to be artistic, have had so many people in their lives tell them not to do art, have had so many reasons not to admit that they want to do art, that this might be the book that gets them out of it. And in that case, doing the morning pages, doing the artist date are things that would be so outside of their realm of their experiences that doing that might be what jars them out of it. But I find it kind of sad that somebody out there wouldn't just take themselves out and do something fun and wacky and artistic.
Right. I don't know if the actual perfect audience for this book exists. It is.
Well, there must be a pretty darn good one because I keep buying it.
Well, here's the thing. I do not think people read this book. And I've probably said that about every single book that we have reviewed. But this one especially. There is nothing meaningful from this book that you can take away, or at least that is long-lasting or has been preserved out in the world, other than morning pages and artist dates. That's it. That's all anyone talks about. That's the only chapter. People don't read the rest of the book because there's not much there to get, or they just don't remember it because there was nothing meaningful said.
But you could also say this is one of those books that's supposed to jar you out of your regular path that you're going on. And maybe if it jars you out of the path, you don't actually have to read the rest of the book. It just is that one poke that you need.
I guess you're giving this book a lot of credit. I guess someone's gotta.
I mean, so one of the ideas the book had that I think is unique to this book, or is unique to this particular style of self-help books, is the importance of being selfish as an artist. And I don't necessarily like the the idea of being selfish as an artist because a lot of the stuff she tells you to do are kind of mean and very self-centered things, like cutting off people in your family that aren't supportive of your artist intentions, leaving friends that may be artistic but make you feel bad because you're not artistic the way they are, just sort of like spending money on yourself to do art stuff instead of maybe another family member or somebody else that might need help. It doesn't really sit well with me, but I also acknowledge that if someone isn't willing to do this stuff, then there's a good chance they won't be able to express themselves artistically. Because part of doing art is being selfish. If you read about famous artists, a lot of them are really selfish.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people I'd imagine who are creatively blocked probably have that issue where people were like, don't be selfish. Like
Hmm.
they internalized that or were told their art was being selfish and so that they shouldn't do it and so that they didn't do it. So maybe that's what they needed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, or they felt obligated to their family, or they thought that we're told that artists were horrible people. We have all those lists of all the things that people expect artists to be, which were kind of hilarious when you think about it. But I could see that.
One good thing from this book is that it will validate, like you might have various hangups. It's going to validate your hangups. It's going to tell you exactly what your hangup is and describe it really well. And you're going to get excited. You're going to be like, oh my God, somebody gets it. But then you will not be given any strategy or solution to fix that hangup or to help with that hangup. She'll leave you hanging.
I can see that. Yeah. We had some great conversations about possible solutions to the hangups. In a way, this is a great book for spurring conversations with other people.
Yeah. If you wanted to have conversations about the process of writing, this might be a good book to like review and to discuss in a group and then offer, oh, what have you learned?
And there is a section at the end of the book called Creative Clusters Guide. So the idea is you could use this as a book club book. I would advise you if you use a book club book, it should be one of those book clubs that serves alcohol because it'll be fun.
Yeah. That would probably help. So, should we start with the things that we liked at all or the things we didn't like?
Yeah, what was something you liked?
So, some of the things I liked were actually just good one-liners.
Okay.
She had some good one-liners. And again, she validated some of my experiences and feelings about writing, and I liked that. It didn't offer a solution, but at least it got halfway there. And so I kind of appreciated that.
Sometimes
Um,
when you've got an issue or something like that and you never can quite put it into words and someone puts it into an actual sentence, that is useful. If nothing else, you can use that one again to remind yourself.
right. Or at least it gives you some kind of, North Star to go look it up somewhere else. Like, okay, well, if this is a thing, someone put words to it. So now I can use those words to find a solution from somebody else because now I have like the almighty Google. The one we've talked about before, I think it is also one of your favorite lines, had to do with procrastination as a form of fear. And she said, safety is a very expensive illusion. So by avoiding your work, you're keeping yourself safe from ridicule or criticism or whatever. And you're trying to do it from a place of being safe from those things. And that's why you're not working on your art. So I thought that was a really cool line.
That one really stayed with me because, it's the fact that if you're constantly fixing something, you're constantly getting better, it's not good enough to show, then nobody can tell you it's wrong. Nobody
Right.
can tell you you've gone down the wrong trail. You can't be criticized for something you never show. But
Right.
it's an illusion of safety. It's an expensive illusion because you're not actually putting anything out there and you're not growing as an artist because you want to stay safe.
Yeah. Another line I like, the point is not to overcome self-doubts. The point is to move through them. And that speaks to a lot of stuff which maybe this book inspired, I don't know, but I've been diving a little bit into self-compassion meditation and Kristen Neff and Tara Brach talk about the idea you don't avoid your negative feelings, which is what procrastination is, right? You don't avoid your negative feelings. You have to like feel in them and be in them and get used to them and like figure out what they are. But they're not really going to go away, but you have to learn how to live within them. And that is a concept that I don't think I was willing to face in the past, but I'm getting it now and I've been working on it. And I'm like, oh my God, that kind of works.
Yeah, that is something right there. And I'm sure as heck that it did not come from the artist way. I'm sure that it came from a lot of other more carefully considered research, but it definitely probably flows through the world in which she lives in. And she kind of picked that up as well.
Her AA meeting, it probably came from that.
So this book is constantly referring to God, the great creator, and she's got this set of ideas about how, things will just come to you if you believe in yourself. But what I got out of that was that self-belief is critical for the artist. You have to really believe. And by putting really in front of it, I almost like negate it, but there has to be this part of you that is convinced that your art is worth it, that what you are doing is valid, that you are making the world a better place, or you're doing whatever it is that you want it to accomplish, and that you will accomplish it. Because otherwise, doing art is lonely and it's discouraging. People don't always appreciate it. And if you don't have that mindset going in, it's really easy to let it go.
You have to have a little bit of an ego.
Just a
Faith.
little bit of an ego. I think
Okay,
you
yeah.
have to have a lot of ego. You have to be convinced that you're right.
Yeah, I can see that.
Again, I don't know if this book would help you get there other than, if you cut off all the people in your life that don't appreciate you. Maybe the actions of pushing people that aren't supportive of your art away and investing so much in it would kind of cause you to believe for sure that you can make it as an artist, if only because, you don't have a backup plan anymore.
That's right. You've gotten rid of all your backup plans and now you're screwed. And you have no choice but to follow through with your art. I like what she had to say about competition. When we focus on competition, we poison our own well, impede our own progress. When we are ogling the accomplishments of others, we take our eye away from our own through line. We ask ourselves the wrong questions, and those wrong questions give us the wrong answers. Somebody else's success is not a threat.
Right. Or you're not in competition. The idea there is that whenever you're comparing yourself, you're always going to come away feeling worse, unless you pick somebody who's significantly worse than you, and then you'll feel.
That's a cheap form of vanity, but okay.
A lot of the things in this book I've seen elsewhere. They're not new things, but it always helps to be reminded of things because it's easy to forget. And one thing that is easy to forget is that I have to enjoy the act of writing. I can't simply be using fear or using rewards or using all these things to keep going. I have to actually get something out of the writing itself, to get something out of the process. That was one of those episodes where when I was listening to it again before we posted it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's some really good advice.
Yeah, if it sucks to write so much, maybe that's not the thing you should be doing.
That or you need to figure out what it was that you liked about it in the first place. You need to go
Right.
back because assuming at some point you did like to write. If you don't like to do it now, what's changed?
Exactly. Identifying the things about the process that you loved and somehow highlighting that more. Focused on process, our creative life retains a sense of adventure. Focused on product, the same creative life can feel foolish or barren. We inherit the obsession with product and the idea that art produces finished product from our consumer-oriented society. This focus creates a great deal of creative block.
Yeah, I think it pretty much nails what I was talking about before in a very convoluted way, which we can talk about the actual writing she has later. Sometimes she had great pithy quotes that you stuck with, and sometimes they just went around and around and around.
This whole book just went around and around and around.
I'm all out of good things to say about this book, so we can jump to the other stuff unless there's one more thing you want to add in there.
No, I don't want to add anything else about the good stuff because that's pretty much it. Yeah.
All right, then let's get to the other stuff.
Woo! What
I
did we
wrote
not like?
I wrote, what didn't work? And I said, it's a mess of a book. There's no organization. She goes by week, but really, you could do the weeks in whatever order you wanted to. Maybe the last one, you could mix and match or whatever. They repeat themselves, they loop, they don't really stick to their points.
The activities too. They're weird. They get repeated. By the end of this book, you'll have like 3 fucking collages.
If that, it may be more.
Maybe more. And you're like, what do I do with these magazines that I collected that have all these holes in them? And I have all these like vision boards.
And you'll throw out all your sensible clothing. So you'll have to wear like, odd patterns every day.
Yeah, you'll be wearing crystals and velvet and the stuff my mom used to wear. I did not like her examples. They were offensive because they were fake.
This book has a lot of Joe, the executive assistant, felt trapped in his life, but suddenly he started doing morning pages and then his screenplay got auctioned off.
It's magic. It felt very much like a commercial. A paid actor. These are the best paper towels I've ever used.
Yeah, pretty much. I have a hard time believing that these people are real. Like, decide she'd hide their identity by giving them some different name. But honestly,
They don't exist. What's another one?
She observes real things and then doesn't explain how to stop doing them or
Yeah.
how to change them, other than to do the morning pages.
Yeah. She just echoes your frustration. And people definitely identify, I think, with this book, but it's an illusion that that's helping.
I think people get a spark out of this book and then maybe go on to do something else. And when they get back and they're trying to figure out why it was they finally got their button gear or did this particular thing, they say, oh, well, maybe it was the artist's way. I can't quite remember what I read in it, but it must have worked.
I guess. But again, like her examples, I don't know who these people are.
Now, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was listening to the episode about workaholism. And her point was that you and I were in slightly different space than she was. She noticed, but when the pandemic hit and she had to change, she had to pull back from a lot of her work obligations, she did feel that she got more creative. So it is possible that this book is not for someone that's already as engaged in doing art, but that for someone that really has forgotten their creative impulses because they've just filled their life with so much stuff, this might be on to some of the things that would fix it, even if it doesn't quite tell you how to do those things. The problem with workaholism is like my friend pulled back because of the pandemic, not because she wanted to be more creative. She just noticed when she pulled back that suddenly there was a space to be creative. This book is very woo-woo. It's very much like if you simply want it, if you simply make the space, the art will flow. The people would come in and give you offers. The success will follow if you just open yourself up to it. And if you don't believe that, then that's going to be a block too, because you have to give yourself fully into experiencing this. And she's kind of right. And at the same time, if it doesn't work, then it's your fault.
Right. It's similar to the self-help book, The Secret, where
Mhm.
they're like, just manifest it. Just imagine that you want it and it'll manifest itself.
Just manifest harder.
Yeah. And if you don't get what you want, it's because you didn't manifest hard enough.
Hmm.
Yeah. I did not like the fact that she had zero authority to talk on this subject.
We want footnotes. We want references.
Damn it. She writes a book about process, and she herself wrote for TV. So if she had used herself more as an example of what her 9 to 5 looked like when she was writing to a deadline and getting paid for writing Miami Vice episodes, and then marrying Martin Scorsese, then maybe, she would be writing from some kind of authority. But in the very beginning, she says she was just walking down the street. She's like, I should teach process. It was a voice from God,
Great creator.
the great creator, and that's it. That's the authority she has to speak on this subject.
There's kind of a vindictiveness when we read these process books where you got to say, well, what does that person actually done that's creative? Like, let's go
Yeah.
check this stuff out. And, there's some interesting stories or interesting gaps in this case where she has this movie that she talks about that is gone from the internet. Just this weird kind of emptiness. And I think that's also the case too. Like, she wrote some Miami Vice episodes, but what she's really famous for is this book
Yeah.
in this series and this set of tours that she does and whatever classes are associated with it and nothing else. And that's like, I want to read a book by someone that actually also was creative, can point to their creative accomplishments, not just their self-help accomplishments.
Right. Exactly.
If you fully follow this book and you follow the advice she has about getting rid of people, toxic people in your life, you're likely to blow up your life. If you're talented and lucky, you'll succeed at the art. And this book will help you succeed at the art. But that kind of determinism has its consequences. And I think that if for people that follow this book, it will have consequences in your life that you'll then have to deal with.
Yeah. It's very black and white the way she looks at your relationships, dear reader. She makes assumptions about your life, and if you follow through with her assumptions, that could not end well for you.
Whereas a book like Bird by Bird, honestly, it's not going to blow up your life. You might actually laugh a lot and get a little bit out of it if you put it aside. Like it's much more lighthearted and not as profound as this, even though it helps writers get to the same place, I think.
It doesn't make bold promises. And she's more down to earth, and Anne Lamott has authority. So, one thing that Julia Cameron did that annoyed me since the beginning was the God stuff.
Hmm.
It's not just the God stuff, it's the condescending, rude, unhelpful, judgy, weird obsession with the God stuff in this book. The way she talks about it, if you don't believe, that's your problem. It's just rude.
I think actually for someone that is religious, they might also have problems with the book. She's very nebulous on exactly what her God is and how her God works and how her God just wants you to be creative and happy and it will give stuff to you. It doesn't actually require all the stuff that various religious gods do. There's also would be frustration for someone that is, that believes in very particular aspects of God because she throws that out the window.
That's a very good point. It is not a specific religion. She's got some private God in her head.
Hotline to him helps her all the time.
It wants to give her money. It wants to give you money for your art. It's just weird. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that was it.
I do have one more, and it's one. She's a two-trick pony. All she's got are artist dates
The
and
morning pages.
morning pages. And the last is that people recommend this book, and I do not believe they've read it. So please, dear listener, do not recommend this book unless you've actually read the whole damn thing.
Or if you really don't like the person.
Right. For example, I was listening to a book recently. It was called How to Get Unstuck. Forget the author's name. She's like, and if you're having a problem being creative, I recommend The Artist's Way. I stopped the book and I deleted it off of my phone. I was like, If somebody who claims to be a researcher or with any kind of authority in science or psychology or whatever, they mention this book and they say you should read it, I'm going to close that book and you've lost all authority. Yeah.
Well, now you have a way of separating out the good self-help books from the bad.
Yeah. It just shows that these self-help books are written by people who aren't actually reading the material they're suggesting. They're cherry picking data and then just throwing advice out like candy, like a piñata.
And we talked about the organization of this book, or rather the lack of organization. I could see someone just like kind of mindlessly reading. I feel kind of sorry for him because it's sort of mindless reading. But if you're not really that attentive to stuff and you skip around and all that, you may think you've read the book because it's all kind of the same all the way through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she repeats herself a lot. She doesn't make a lot of sense half the time. It's anyway, with all that have said, I want to officially say goodbye, Artist's Way. Oh,
Oh,
no.
but we were one last thing is like so we're saying we wouldn't recommend this book.
Well, I wouldn't recommend this book. And in fact, it's a red flag if somebody does. Would you recommend this book?
Not really, but I would say that if someone is interested in the artist's way, they can probably read a blog piece on it or something else of someone telling about what they got out of it, and it will explain the morning pages and the artist date, and that's all you really need to do. If those two things would help you, you'll get them without the book.
And the less you know about them, the better.
Maybe that too.
Just start a damn journal. Okay? That's it. Start a journal and go see some movies and go to some art galleries and you'll be better for it.
Throw away the ugly clothes in your closet.
Yes, but please don't replace them with weird clothes just because. I mean, if unless you really want to. All right. So, with that said, we are now moving on to a new book that we have not done called
The Scene Book, a primer for the fiction writer by Sandra Scofield.
If you're new to the podcast, maybe this is your first episode. We toggle between process books and prescriptive advice books. Give ourselves a little break, right?
So by the time we get done with one, we're really looking for the other instead.
Yeah. So like, we'll read Anne Lamott's book on process. There's not any like specific advice on how to like work on your sentences or your paragraphs or your scenes or whatever. And then we'll toggle to a book called Scene and Structure by Jack Bickham, right? And that is probably the most prescriptive writing book we've ever read in our lives. It is like stereo instructions. So now we are reading a book in that vein. Somebody who breaks it down probably into bullet points on how to write something.
Before we get started, I'd like to point out just the look of this book. And it is designed to look like a composition book. The black and white composition books that you'd get for writing in, and it's perfectly designed that way. It's very minimum on the outside. In fact, part of the design of the book actually is a bit of like tape plastered over. In fact, it even has the information about the line and ruling and all that. It is very minimalistic. And after The Artist's Way with all the fanciness, I was like, ooh, this is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, on the back it says, the scene is the most vivid and immediate part of the story. It is in the scene that a writer captures the heart and imagination of the reader. Every scene has an event. Every scene has a function in the narrative. Every scene has a structure, a beginning, middle, and end. Every scene has a pulse.
I'd like to point out that those particular words are all caps, so you can like really identify what the sentence is about.
Yeah, it's like a vocabulary:
Yeah.
event, function, structure, and pulse.
I think we'll be delving into those words as we read the book.
Yeah, this is a very checklisty book, I can already tell, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially coming after after what we just finished.
I'll also say that if we turn in the book on the second page in, it says also by Sandra Scofield and Occasions of Sin, Gringa, a novel, Beyond Deserving. These sound like actual books as opposed to just self-help books or writing books.
These are actual novels, yes.
Opal on Dry Ground, A Chance to See Egypt. Like we're talking about someone who's published several books,
Yes.
fiction books.
So this person has the authority of going through the process, finding an agent, finding a publisher, and getting published. Actual, real novels.
Hmm.
From the very beginning, this book starts out with her creds. It says Penguin Books, the Scene Book. Sandra Scofield is the author of 7 novels and a memoir. Her novels have received awards, including a nomination for the National Book Award, an American Book Award from the Before Columbus Foundation, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, a new American Writing Award, and the Jesse Jones Award for the Best Fiction from the Texas Institute of Letters.
I'd like to point out that a lot of books can be nominated for all these things, but this also shows that her publisher believed enough in her book to nominate her for various things. So a real thing, not just, vanity publishing.
Yes. Oh, no, I don't think she's ever done vanity publishing. This is
Yeah.
beyond vanity publishing. Several of her novels have been named Notable Books of the Year by the New York Times Book Review. She is a popular summer workshop instructor for the Iowa Summer Writing Festival and other conferences.
And just in case you guys don't know, the Iowa Writing Program is big in the literary community.
It is where the MFA program started. That's like the MIT of creative writing programs.
This book was written
Yeah,
in
when was it written?
2007.
Okay.
So
So
not super old, but not super new.
about 20 years old. Let's see. She's a novelist, essayist, editor, author of writer guides. Oh, yes. She wrote another craft book called The Last Draft, a novelist's guide to revision. And that one was published 10 years later in 2017.
Okay. And we were considering doing that one, but we realized that a lot of people need more help at the beginning stages of writing. I really think that people who listen to the podcast, they kind of want the more introductory stuff.
I mean, I don't know. I won't say we won't ever do a book on revision.
Mhm.
We might actually do a book on revision because why not? But it'd be very difficult to have a novel without a scene,
Without many scenes.
without many, many, many scenes. And if you can nail the scene, then you are well on your way to at least getting a functional novel. I like the promise of this book.
Before that, I was just going to say I'm looking at the contents, different parts, and then chapters within the parts. And the one that I found interesting is part 3, which is some useful scene skills. And chapter 11 is called Big Scenes, scenes that have many characters. And I will say that writing scenes with many characters is hard for me. And I'm absolutely looking forward to somebody kind of spelling out what their approach is to that.
I saw under part 2, the heart of a scene. The chapter 7 is negotiation, an alternative view of conflict, which conflict doesn't make as much sense to me as it could when it's described in terms of literature, but I like the idea of negotiation better. So I thought that kind of drew me in. Also, when she talks about reading for scene and story, learning
Yeah.
to read scenes as a writer, I immediately perk up because I think that whole debate about people should be reading if they want to write is only huge because some people continue to try to get around the reading part
Mhm.
and they shouldn't. And she actually leans into it. And I find that refreshing.
So, shall we get to the introduction?
Get to the introduction.
One other thing I'm going to say I noticed as I was reading through this is that I did miss one thing about The Artist Way. It had such big margins. It was so easy to write notes in. And this one here is tiny little margins. It makes a lot of sense. The paragraphs they're very dense on the page with words. I underline stuff, but I don't have nearly as much space to ramble rants and things like that.
True, but perhaps there will be less ranting about this book.
Maybe I'll just go to using Post-it notes.
For some reason, it never really bothers me. I find a way to stuff my reactions in no matter what.
But I really got spoiled on The Artist Way. I mean, I could just write whole little essays on the side there.
The designer for the book Artist's Way, they were very good.
Mhm.
They did a really good job designing that book.
Yeah. It starts off Introduction, the Reading Writer. The principles that guided the development of the book, parentheses, in some ways, the introduction is about you. Anyway, it starts off with about me. And she says, I learned about writing the hard way, without classes or mentor. Yet writing never felt hard. I like it that she's coming at us as a writer, not as, someone walking down the street that had inspiration.
Yeah, she's not even selling herself as a professor. And she's not selling herself as a necessarily privileged writer
Mhm.
like Anne Lamott, whose father was a famous novelist. And she contacted his agent, who became her agent, right? She said she got there without classes and a mentor.
Although she teaches classes now, so.
Well, she's earned her spot there because she published and wrote novels.
So I noticed on the second page, she lists a bunch of books that she's read. And I thought that Renee would like that because we've read some books where, it's about writing. And yet the only thing the authors can pull out are movies and TV shows.
Yes, that's another sign that made me want to do this book. Her examples all come from novels,
Mhm.
contemporary novels, not old novels that they all use. So I thought that was promising. So, why she focused on the scene, I thought was important. What I wanted, I see now, was to enter another world, the life of the scene. I wanted to watch characters work out of their destinies on the page, and I would grow very excited waiting for a story to reach its final image. I never knew what it would be before I got there. Writing was, in some way, another form of reading and an extension of my dreams.
If you've got a good story in your head, you want to get it on a page because you want to read it.
Yeah. Also, because you're a reader and the joy of experiencing a story, you want to be the creator of the story to be read.
So we move on from about the book to about the book and you. She talks about the book. I will say that the introduction is a little bit, this is like all the build up before we read the book. So I liked the line of what you need now is something specific and practical, something to help you think like a writer. And if this book does that, I'm all in.
Yeah. She says, I came to believe that what readers care about most are characters and that what they remember best are images and action. Slowly over the years, I developed what I think of as craft, the practice, deliberate way of choosing how to say things in order to reach the desired effect.
Yeah, it sounds good. I think it makes sense to start your introduction saying things like that. I thought this part here was good for Renee. She said, be patient. All arts, painting, playing the violin, blowing glass are built on solid practice. Doing the exercise really does bake the batter.
It does.
Promising us exercises, and she's using a cooking analogy. I think that's kind of like right up Renee's alley.
It is. She does narrow down her reader, which I thought was interesting. She says, about the book and you. She describes who the reader of this book should be.
So there she's saying, I know you've already worked at your craft and maybe you've progressed on it. Maybe you've gotten frustrated. Come read this book and we'll make more progress by having a more structured approach.
But I don't think it's for an absolute beginner. You know,
I don't think an absolute beginner would probably pick this up. It's pretty dense.
right. Oh, that's another thing. It is dense. It is a little intimidating.
It's not bright and shiny and, I want to open this book because it's got a pretty mountain on it. It speaks of school. It's written it's a composition book. It's something you had to work on. People that don't really like composition books are never going to pick this one up. It's a perfect self-selection right there.
And yet I was drawn to it.
Are you a person that would like to pick up a blank composition book because you just want to write your stuff down?
Yeah.
Then this is for you. If you're a person that needs to pick up a fancy journal with a beautiful color and special papers and a ribbon to write anything down on, you're never going to pick this one up.
I guess. Would you never pick up this book?
I would totally pick up this book.
Okay.
But I pick up composition books all the time, like blank ones to write in.
She does, dear listener, I've seen them, stacks and stacks and stacks of composition books, all with writing in them. So she identifies herself, why she became a writer. She then identifies who her reader is. Then she goes into what her strategy is going to be. She says, yet I think you can study others' writing, identify useful elements of craft, and apply them in your own work. And I'm not alone in this belief. So she is already telling you how you're going to learn about scenes in her book, which is by reading other scenes. She's going to teach you how to read scenes and pull the strategies from them. She says, plowing through exercises, choosing your own models, keeping a notebook, trying to incorporate new skills. These are the ways you learn. I urge you to work without rushing, which is great because this is what we're going to do.
We take our time with these books.
We do the activities. I was thinking maybe we should keep a notebook. and find scenes from books we're reading.
Sure, let's try it.
Because, I mean, she says to keep a notebook. I'm like, well, okay, that's part of the magic of this book. Also, the cover is a composition book. So maybe that's what it's also implying. She says, understanding the way that the sense of the scene underlies narrative will put you in control of your story. And there's nothing I want more than to be in control of my story. So then, very much like Bickham, if you want to go back into the previous episodes, we read scene and structure. He was the bullet point king. Well, the bullet points have returned.
Mhm.
And she talks about the things that she will do, which is almost kind of hilarious because they look exactly like learning outcomes that you'd put in a syllabus. One of them is explain important basic principles, how scenes work, suggest numerous exercises to help you develop a repertoire of skills. And she promises that you will know how scenes work, how you can study author scenes, and how you can make your scenes work.
I
So,
halfway expect that there should be like a list of what days the exams are going to be on and what percentage your grade is going to count for each of those.
dude, yeah, it is like a syllabus, isn't it?
It looks so much like a syllabus. What I also like is kind of when they tell you what it's not about. And she talks here about how the emphasis here is on writing major scenes, the ones that carry the story, although fragments of scenes often embedded in narrative or used elliptically, and minor scenes augmenting the main storyline. Not every scene can or should have the same weight. So, like, she's saying she's going to go for the big scenes. And that's kind of nice too, because that way you don't put the same amount of effort into every single scene. She does the big scenes. So that's good too.
Yeah. And I bet she probably goes into the other ones too, the minor scenes and the fragments. I bet she has a little chapter on that. She also has footnotes, which is funny.
Oh, yeah. Some of the footnotes are kind of interesting. She
She's,
encourages you from buying used books because the money doesn't go to the author.
yeah, sorry. I buy used books all the time. She says, what you may find is that if you construct a solid sequence of scenes in one of your early drafts, like a painter doing studies, you will then be comfortable with a freer narrative flow that darts in and out of the scenes, letting them assume a more subtle role in the narrative.
I agree with that. I've discovered that sometimes when I was doing my first book, I was very much following Bickham on scenes and really trying to amp them up. And then I discovered that you could then massage them back. So they didn't have to be quite so explicit. You can make them a bit more subtle as long as the original version was strong and had all the right structure to it.
She says if you find yourself in narrative summaries or within scenes referring to events that happened before the time of the story, it will probably help you to stop and write the important prior scenes, even though you may not use them. So she's already giving advice, and it's not even out of the introduction gate yet. And then on to about talent and apprenticeship.
I mean, I think it all makes sense. When I'm reading the introduction like this, part of me is chomping at the bit to get to the actual book itself. So unless there's
Right.
something really amazing in the introduction, I kind of just keep
Go
pushing
through
on
it.
it.
Well, I feel like I kind of like it in the sense that it is telling you exactly what it's going to tell you. Like, this is the class you're signing up for.
Mhm.
If you don't like it, you should drop now before the drop date.
Put it back on the shelf.
That's right. She suggests a book by William Sloane called The Craft of Writing. She has a nice little line that I liked. As writers practice skills, their talent flowers.
I mean, we'll get a chance to see if all this stuff that she's promising comes out in the book itself. That's the other thing about the introduction. So you can say a lot of stuff in the introduction, and then we find out for real by the time we get to chapter 3.
True. There's one thing she talks about, which I think is interesting, is she does talk about grammar and the mastery of the sentence, which is kind of a heated debate sometimes in schools and in colleges and stuff. It's like, yes, if you're a writer, you should probably have a semi good command of the language because that's what you do, right? If you're an artist, you probably should have a pretty solid grasp on perspective, making objects look like 3D. Seems like that's something you should be good at, or at least working towards. And I don't know how I feel about that. And also, because of AI, people don't have to have perfect grammar anymore because AI will probably fix it.
But the counter bit is that if you're not solid in your grammar to begin with, then you won't necessarily know if the AI is giving you the right suggestions or not. To go back to the painting thing, the fact is that there are a whole bunch of people that are abstract painters or people that surrealists. A lot of the greats, if you look at it, actually had classical training. They learned how to do perspective. They may have chosen not to do it afterwards, but they did learn the basics. And learning the basics of grammar, if you jump around and jump into something, you haven't had a good basis. There's always that feeling in the back of your mind that you're missing something or that somebody
Mm-hmm.
else is much more solid. Or Renee will start talking grammar stuff and I'm like, oh, okay, what? It makes sense to read a basic grammar book of something so that you feel confident. And that way, if somebody else starts talking about grammar and sentences, you at least know that you've learned it yourself. And if they disagree with it, it's not because you're an idiot and they're really smart.
I guess. There's an episode, early episode, John Gardner days from our very first book we reviewed. And there was a whole rant I went on about grammar. I know grammar pretty damn well, as is I had to take classes on how to teach it to students. Right. So I had to know more than they did. And then I had to know why they were making the mistakes they were making. And then I had to put that into words and definitions and terminology and then give them tests. The thing with grammar, they've done studies and they have found that when you try to teach grammar explicitly, this is a noun, this is a verb, this is a predicate, blah, blah, blah. Diagramming sentences isn't really going to help you that much. And even reading a composition book or a book on grammar, like you can get some Strunk and White, unless you already have a command of the language or of writing, that book actually isn't going to help you that much. What will help you is reading, and then writing, and then reading some more, and then writing some more. And that's not the answer people want to know. They want a solution, like me sometimes about craft. But grammar is not one of those things that will come quickly, but it will come and you'll get some command over it. And what it does is it gives you choices. The more command you have over the language, the tool, the more you know, the more tricks you can do. The learning of it through Strunk and White when you are starting out as a super beginner is not going to help you very much.
So she's saying you should get a book and read about grammar because she also knows that somebody that works really hard at their writing but never actually checks in with a book or doesn't have an instructor to help kind of ping them along is going to make some obvious mistakes in their grammar, which might cause other people to reject them out of hand. I'm guessing she's frustrated because she sees some really good writers that just are using commas all over the place as opposed to other sentence structures, or they don't match their tenses or something like basic like that. The Struck and Whites will teach you to do.
Yes, but in order to even have comma splices and be able to name them means that yes, you can go to Strunk and White and look it up and it's going to help you, but you already got that far. Like if your writing is still choppy and you're not putting the verb and the noun in the right spot, Strunk and White is not going to help you because you don't know what a noun is and you don't know what a verb is. But if you read and you write and you read and you write, you will get an
Well, you know what a noun and verb is if you read and you write and you read and you write. You'll know that
you will put them in the correct order naturally.
Okay.
It's science. In the end, she says, in terms of one's learning shift as one progresses, we improve incrementally. This is my advice. Think of yourself as a worker, show up at the job.
But in the chair.
But in the
No great
chair.
creator.
Yep. But also, she does bring up another book, which I have read, called Writing Fiction, A Guide to Narrative Craft. It is a text book. So I think this book is meant to be maybe a textbook. What do you think?
I don't know. We'll have to see. What really will come down to is when I see the exercises.
We haven't done an exercise in forever.
We have not.
Oh my God. Are you ready for this, Kim?
I don't know.
I am. I'm happy.
I was wondering, what do you want to get out of this book?
I feel like I have a pretty good command over language.
Mhm.
And I could do all these tricks and stuff. But when it comes to scenes, which I think are mostly the meat of a novel, I feel like if I can nail the scene, then I can outline my books.
Mm.
I can structure it in a way that makes sense to the reader. I can turn it into either a page turner or I can manipulate it to turn it more into like literary fiction. I have more choices. I have more control, and I've never really gotten a good description of scene. Even Jack Bickham, who did a really good job, I think, still wasn't quite enough for me.
Okay.
What about you? What do you hope to get out of this book?
So I have a fairly good idea of scene, but I think that seeing somebody else's take on it, because we've read Bickham and that was a really good approach, but that was his method and it really worked well for him. And as I'm writing the second book, I haven't outlined every scene that way to say what's the scene goal, how is it all going to come out. So I'm really interested to see how someone else approaches scenes. Because I'm already familiar with the ideas that Bickham had and also my own writing, I think I'll be able to identify a lot of that stuff. But I'm thinking that there's going to be some interesting things that pop up that I hadn't thought about that I will get because I have expectations and I can see where it's different. So that's what I'm looking forward to in this book, to find out what extra things she notices about scenes that maybe I had never thought about.
I'm just excited that we're reading somebody who is going to give us examples from contemporary novels.
We also have the exercises. So I think we'll start off with one chapter I would rather go slowly and do the exercises than to run through this. And it doesn't actually have so many chapters. It has 14 chapters.
Oh, that's not that bad. Yeah. And, we'll probably do an every other week thing because we also have to do the writing and we have our own
Right.
projects.
Right. Sometimes what we like to do is we like to discuss the actual chapter and then do the writing after that because sometimes there might be something that shows up. I do want to be held accountable to do the exercises.
Yeah. And I think you can do those exercises like they don't have to be independent from your novel. I think you can actually just work on scenes that you were already writing in your novel.
Maybe not the initial ones, but I think later ones can.
All right. So we have lots of hope for this book. I can already guarantee I'm going to like it more than the previous book. By the way, you should really thank us, dear listener, for getting through The Artist's Way. That shit was not easy.
The only reason we get through these books is because we commit to them on the podcast and we have to keep going.
Right. But our commitment means you don't have to commit, dear listener. You can just listen and get all the goods. With that said, we do not have advertising on this podcast, if you haven't noticed. However, we do have a tip jar. We really are just two old ladies in a closet. And it'd be really great if maybe you showed us a little love with all the work we just did with The Artist's Way. That was really hard. And you can buy us a coffee. If you go to our website, words2writebypodcast.com, you can go up to the top. It says tip jar. You click on it and you can buy us a coffee on the Buy Us a Coffee website. And we will totally buy a coffee. I like cappuccinos. What do you like, Kim?
I like single origin roasts.
She likes single origin
The brighter,
roasts.
the better.
Yep, there you go. So that is what we will buy with that because we're gonna need it to get through this next book, and we certainly needed it through The Artist's Way. And one other announcement: I finally finished my query agent letter for my memoir. And
Congratulations. Have you sent it out?
Yes, it's been sent. I know, it's scary.
Have you got a rejection yet?
I don't even think they give you a rejection. They don't even email you back, but that's okay. Part of the job as a writer. Anyway, while I was writing the section about our podcast, because you have to have some comps, right? I looked up how many downloads we've had, and we've had roughly 42,700 downloads for this podcast. That is insane. We've had over 100 episodes. So I just want to say thank you, Kim, for coming up with the idea of doing a podcast because it has worked out really well and it has made me a better writer.
That is good. It has made me a better writer too.
And I just want to thank all of you listeners. The fact that all you strangers are listening to us just blows my mind.
And all our loved ones that are listening to us, thank you too.
Oh my God, you've been there since the beginning. Thank you.
You don't have a choice in the matter.
We've come a long way from me making cinnamon rolls for Max's coworkers to get them to listen to the podcast.
Yes, we have outgrown the cinnamon roll bribe. This got a little bit rambly, but I think that when we start reading this book, we'll have a nice structure and we will have something to organize our discussions about, which was something that was lacking. So hopefully we'll just have this point and this point, and this how it goes together. And here's the exercise. Nice and easy.
Yep, nice and easy.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. You take care and come to our process group.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smiga Adam. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
And it's not like the person out on the dance floor who's just making it up is bad. I mean, that could be really good too.